I'm going to try to do a demonstration here of how to create the twist box for the Chinese thread book. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Chinese way of saying it because I've never heard it pronounced. But this is the first top element, and it's very sweet, and it's a little bit tricky. I'm going by this set of directions which I created, and I'm using this piece of paper I just covered with crayon on one side with blue and one side with orange, just so that it matches the set of directions. So here we go. This piece of paper, what makes this special is it's twice as long plus a 1/4 inch as it is wide. So in this case it's 4 inches wide and 8 1/4 inches tall. Whatever, it should be a 2 by 1 plus a 1/4 inch. The ratio should be 2 by 1 plus a 1/4 inch. And the 1/4 inch doesn't have to be that specific. It's just that you're going to need a tab, and a 1/4 inch tab is pretty good. So I'm just going to, the first step will be to fold that tab, that 1/4 inch. And after I fold it, I'll open it back up and fold this in half, long edge to long edge. And in just about every fold that I do, I'm going to reverse it, because you're really going to need sharp folds to make this work. So reversing a fold is just taking it one way and then making it go the other way and then bringing it back again. Next, I'm going to cut off the corners of the tab on the top, and you'll notice this is just a little bit bigger than a 45-degree angle. I'm going to cut off those corners, open it up, fold these down, fold these down right on the original fold, and now I forget about them for a while. Now what I want to do is I want to make this into an M fold, which means it's a little accordion, which means I'll fold it once in half, bring down the side, flip it over, fold this down in half again. See? It's an M. Now open everything up, and this is a good time now to reverse these folds. Okay, here we go. Fold in half. Now you see, if you can see this from the shadows, from the creases, it's like there's 4 little squares here. See, there's 4 little creases of squares. I want to fold each of one of these squares in half along the diagonal. I keep the open bottom here, and I fold down from the top corner and bring it down. A little trick to make it even is I'll bring this up and make sure everything fits nicely. And reverse it. Same thing here. Start at the corner, bring it down. So I'm folding the corner. So I'm folding the square in half along the diagonal. Reverse it. This will make your folding, the twist, so much easier at the end, because the twisting of it to make that sort of cool way it twists open and close is so much tougher if your folds aren't sharp. I'm probably having to do this just a little bit more intensely because it's covered with crayon. So it's a little waxy. Okay, there we go. Now I just open everything up again. That's what it looks like. Next, it's like there's these little squares again, and right here in these lower folds, I can cut that, but I'm just going to tear it. It's just really a little easier to tear it. And you'll see that if I make a little mistake with the tear, it's not going to make any difference. But these 3 cuts that I'm making, I think work out better. It's just easier to tear it than it is to cut it. Now, I want to cut away 3/4 of this square and 3/4 of this square. The only thing that's going to be left is a little triangle down there. And this time it's easier to cut it with the scissors. Now, I tried to work out a way of doing this where I could keep everything and I didn't have to cut anything away. But for the thread book, it just made the base of this box too bulky. There was just too many folds, and it just didn't work out. So in Ruth Smith's classes, she gives them like a template. I don't like a real template because it's harder to scale. But if you start with the dimensions I talked about, which is twice as long plus 1/4 inch, as it is as this, 2 times 1 plus 1/4 inch, you end up with what looks like a template. But you can size it any way you want to. Okay, so now this part, just pay attention. We're going to deal with these flaps. This one gets glued down. This one gets glue on top of it. And I'm going to use my fingers just because I don't want to have a brush around, and it gives me that really, if I use my fingers with this white glue, I can really make a really thin amount of glue, which is what I like. And it dries so fast that it really doesn't distract me at all, but I've got a little bit of a paper towel I can wipe my fingers on. Okay. So now, this is glued down, this is glue on top. I fold this over and nicely put everything in place. There it goes. Here's a little preview. It looks like a little box. Looks like a little box. I bring this up, and in the set of directions that I made, I labeled these 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they go down in that order. So the tab is the one that goes last. So it's 1, 2, 3, and with number 4, and you might want to use a glue stick for this, but I just put a nice little thin coat of glue all over. And set up my little box just perfectly. Press everything down, and now it's glued together. Finally, I've got these diagonals on each of the sides, and I push those in, make sure the vertical ones stay out, and I just go around pushing them in and turning it around, and they eventually just go down into that little shape. And there we go. There it is. Once it's gotten into that shape once, you can flatten it down, and it pretty much remembers to just go back there. You don't have to fuss with it again too much. Just sort of goes back and forth. You see how nice and thin that is? Nice and thin. And that's how you create the twist box. And you need 4 of them for the Chinese thread box, but gee, it's just a nice little structure.